Hello and welcome to Celtic Knitted Designs. In this video I'm going to teach you how to make a super chunky bobble hat in the round. To begin, you need some super chunky yarn. Today I'm using Line brand Wool Ease Thick and Quick. This is like a lovely peacocky green colour. It's 80% acrylic and 20% wool. You also need some circular needles. These are 9mm circulars, scissors, darning needle, and a pom-pom maker. For this one I'm using Knit Pro 3 and 3/8 inch or 85mm pom-pom maker. Okay, so to get started, we first of all need to make a slip knot. So you have your yarn in the left hand, put up the two fingers of your right hand, wrap the yarn round, cross it over the top, turn your fingers to face you, take that back strand underneath and pull through. And there we have our slip knot. Now I'm going to slide that slip knot onto circular needle and just pull it to secure. There we go. And now we are going to do a new cast on method. This is a cast on method that's often used for 1x1 ribbing, and it gives you a really stretchy edge, cast on edge, which is great for things like hats. So we've got that first slip knot, and then what we're going to do is knit into that first stitch. So just going in the bottom so that the needles cross over, wrap the working tail round, pull it through. Then we're going to pull that loop so it becomes quite nice and loose, and then slide it onto the needle through the front, like so. Now, so you can see we've got the slip knot and then that first stitch. So now what we're going to do is we've got that knitwise cast on, we now need a purlwise. So what we're going to do is take the needle, push it in from the back to the front in between those two stitches. So we're not going into the stitch, we're going in between the two, like you can see there. And we then purl that, like normal, pull it through, pull it through, get a bit of slack, and then slide it onto the needle. Now you can see our working yarn is now 2 stitches down. Here it is here. And that's how we know we've done a purl stitch. So now it's another knit stitch. So we are going to go in between those two from the front to the back. It's not into the stitch, in between the two, like that. Knit it. Get some slack, slide it on and pull through to secure. So that's knitwise, and our working yarn is back to where it should be. So we know that was a knitwise if we lose where we are. So again, we're going to purl. So we're going in between the two, but from the back to the front, and purl that stitch, pull it through, slide it on and secure. And again, the working yarn is 2 stitches back. So now we know we need a knit. So in between the two from the front to the back, knit that stitch, get a bit of slack on the loop, pick up the left needle, slide through and secure. And now another purl. So from the back to the front, push the needle through, wrap the yarn round and pull through like a normal purl stitch. Give yourself a bit of slack and secure. Now we've got 2, 4, 6, 7 stitches on the needle now, and we have the yarn ready. Well, we can tell that we've just done a purl, so it's now a knit, and we are going to continue like this until we have knitted 46 stitches. So we'll just keep going. Okay, so I think we're getting there now with our cast on. We'll just check how many stitches we've got on there. 42, 44, 46. Yep, so we've cast on our 46 stitches. Now, we are doing this in the round, so there's a few important things to remember. First of all, now that we've cast them on, just make sure they're not twisted, because this can lead to problems later on. So just make sure they're all sitting nicely on the needle. Now what we're going to do is join the stitches. That's why we've cast on 46, because when you usually do a 1x1 rib, you usually have an odd number. We've done an even number because we're basically going to lose one of these stitches in joining. Now, joining the stitches when they're on a circular needle like this is often called the magic loop method. So in order to join, what we're going to do is take the right needle, put it under the bottom of that last stitch that we cast on purlwise. Then we're going to slide it off of the left needle and onto the right. We're then going to take the very first stitch, which was our slip knot, and pick it up purlwise with our left needle. And then we're going to pass it over this slipped stitch off the right needle and slide it off. And then we are just going to tighten that to secure. And that's us joined the whole loop. So we're ready now to do the magic loop method. Now the problem here is that it's difficult to tell when you finish a round. So we don't call them rows when we're working circular, we call them rounds, because we're literally just going to knit round and round and round. And it's in like a spiral type effect. So what we need to do is mark this first stitch. Well, mark this last stitch, which was our join. So to do that, you need one of these, a wee stitch marker. If you don't have one handy, just thread through a little bit of scrap yarn under that first needle and it'll do the trick. So I picked a yellow one here so it stands out. I like these kind of ones. There's so many different ones you can get. Just go crazy and use whichever one you want. Okay, so now we're going to start by continuing in 1x1 rib. So the way we cast on, using that 1x1 rib cast on, we can actually see what we've got coming up. So this little bump here means that our very first stitch of the round is going to be a purl. And then we don't have a bump at the end of this one, so it's a knit. So we are just going to start working in 1x1 rib, purl, we're going to knit, and then we're going to purl again, and knit again, purl, and knit, and if you put this down and you forget where you're at, just have a look at the stitches. Okay, there's a little bump here, there's not one here, so that's a purl and that's a knit. So we purl and then knit, and we just continue in 1x1 rib until we reach that stitch marker. And we're coming up to the end of this first round, so we're going to knit, and then our last stitch we are going to purl into there. There we go. And we're just going to tighten that up to secure. So that's the end of our first 1x1 rib round. Now, because we had that stretchy 1x1 rib cast on, you kind of see that you don't really have this definitive cast on edge. It just merges straight into the rib, which is really cool and really effective for when you're doing a hat like this. So now we're on to the last stitch of that first round, because we've got our stitch marker here. I'm going to do something a bit different here. What I'm going to do is purl these two stitches, so the last stitch and the first stitch together. That just helps us blend, but it also helps us to have a continuous 1x1 rib. So we'll purl those two together. And there's our stitch marker, and that was the end of the first round and start of the second. And then we're just going to continue in our 1x1 rib. So again, if you're working along and you think you've put it down, gone to make a cup of tea, and you come back and you thought, oh, what's the next stitch? Just have a little look. If you've got this little V and no bump at the base, it's a knit stitch. If you've got a little bump at the base, which is more obvious now, it's a purl. Knit and then purl. And we just continue like this until we get to the end of the round. Now we're in the last stitch and it's a purl, which also starts round 3. So you can see we're starting to build up on this rib at the base of our hat, and this cast on edge has just disappeared because we've done this 1x1 extra stretchy cast on, and it just melts and merges straight into the rib, and it's really effective for a super chunky hat like this. And another one of the great things about using super chunky yarn is that it grows really quickly, so it's really satisfying, and it means you can get a project done in an evening, which is pretty good. So again, we're now in round 3, and we're just going to continue with our 1x1 rib. Okay, so I can see the little stitch marker coming round, so I know we're reaching the end of our 3rd round. And there's the purl. Now if you want, you can move that stitch marker up so that it's more obvious when you get to the end of the round. So now we're going into round 4, again of 1x1 rib, creating the brim of the hat. In total, we are going to do 10 rounds of 1x1 rib to form the brim. So either use a row counter to keep track or do tally marks in your notebook, or I'll also, once we get a bit further along, I'll show you how to count up the rows in case you do lose count. We can see it's really starting to grow now, and we can see we've got the definition of our 1x1 rib. And so we'll just continue with round 6. The difference when you're doing 1x1 ribbing in the round compared to if you were doing it flat with straight needles is that you actually don't alternate. So if we were doing it flat, we would knit and do knit 1, purl 1, and then when we turn it round, it would actually be the opposite, so we get this effect. But when you do it like this in the round, it's the same every time, because instead of going back and forth, we're going up like this, which I think is pretty cool. Okay, so I promised to show you how to count up the rounds in case you've lost count or you've lost your tallies or you think you've not marked one down or anything like that. So if we focus on a load of the column of knit here, this first one, this first V at the bottom is cast on, so we're just going to ignore that one. And then each V up from that we're going to count. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then the stitch that's on the loop is 10. So that's our 10 rounds of 1x1 ribbon, the cast on edge. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we've moved our marker up to here, we've done our rib for the brim of the hat, we're moving on to doing the body of the hat. So, as I said, it's going to be stocking stitch or stockinette stitch. So we're going to start by knitting every stitch in the round. So we just knit, stitch all the way around. And we're coming to the end of the round now. There's the marker. And knit that last one. Okay, so we've done our first row stocking stitch. We started with the knit stitch. Now, if we were doing this on flats, as I said earlier, on straight needles, we would be alternate each row. So now we would do a purl. But if you look on the inside, There's our normal purl, but because we're doing this as a spiral, to create the stocking stitch effect, you just keep doing the knit stitch. So again, round 2 is knit stitch, but we will create the stocking stitch effect. You can start to see the V's forming there. So no purl is required. Just keep on knit stitch into every stitch in the round. Okay, so that's the end of round 2 of stocking stitch. We can see it's starting to form that typical pattern. And if we look on the inside, there's all the bumps that would be our purl stitches, and here's all the V's that are knit stitches. Now we're going to continue in stocking stitch for another 12 rows, so we've got 14 rows in total. So this is me starting round 3 now, and as I said, we'll have 14 rows of stocking stitch in total. Okay, so now we are doing round 14 of our stocking stitch, which is the last round that forms the body of the hat. So we are just knitting round. Now again, if you have put your knitting down and you've picked it back up and you can't remember how many rounds you've done, then remember to count the V's, and that will show you how many rounds you're at, like I showed you earlier. Okay, so now you can see we have our 10 rounds of 1x1 rib for our brim of our hat, and then we've got our 14 rounds of stocking stitch or stockinette stitch for the body. So now what we're going to do is form the crown of the hat. So we're going to start decreasing. So this is we're getting towards the end now of our super chunky adult size hat. So what we're going to do is knit 5 stitches, and then we are going to knit 2 together. So this will continue in the stocking stitch pattern because we're going to knit every round again, and we're going to repeat that knit 5, knit 2 together until we get to the end of the round. So now more than ever, it's probably important that you have your stitch marker in a really obvious place. So we're going to move that up again so it's ready to go. Okay, so we're going to start by knitting 5. And then we're going to knit 2 together. So what we're going to do is go in to that second stitch with our right needle, pick up the first stitch, so we've got 2 stitches picked up there, knit, wrap the yarn round, go in between the 2, slide the left needle up and off, and that's us decreased 1 stitch by knitting 2 stitches together. Now we're going to knit another 5. And then again we're going to knit 2 together. So into that second stitch, pick up the first one. So we've got the 2 picked up, wrap the yarn round, in between, and knit them and slide them off. So now we've decreased 2, and then just continue. And knit 2 together again. And then knit 5. Knit 2 together. Knit 5. Knit 2 together. Knit 5. Knit 2 together, And then we've got these last two, we're just going to knit. 1, 2, and that's the end of that first decrease round. So we knit 5 stitches and then we knit 2 together. And now what we're going to do is our second decrease round. We're going to knit 4 and then knit 2 together. So 1, 2, 3, 4, knit 2 together. Now what you can see, that one that I'm picking up, the second one, was our first knit 2 together there. So what we get is a really neat decrease because it kind of blends up, which looks cool. So again, knit 4, knit 2 together, knit 4. Now I've lost count there, so I can go back and I can see there's my 2 that were knit together, because you can see those 2 there. 1, 2, 3, so knit another 1, and then knit 2 together, and then again just knit the last 2 stitches of the round, 1 and 2. Okay, so that is our second decrease row. You can see they're starting to spiral up there, which looks nice. Now we're going into our third decrease row. We're going to knit 3 and then knit 2 together. 1, 2, 3, 2 together. And just continue like that to the end of the round. And then again, we're just going to knit those last 2 stitches of the round. And we're now on to our fourth row of decreasing. You can see we've got far fewer stitches on the circular needles now, and each round's getting quicker. So now what we're going to do is knit 2 and then knit 2 together. Knit 2, knit 2 together, and now we're at the last 2 stitches. We're just going to knit those. Okay, and ready for our next round of decrease. We are going to knit 1 and then knit 2 together until we get to the last 2 stitches of the round. Knit 1, knit 2 together, and then the last 2 we're just going to knit 1 and 2. Okay, so now we have very few stitches left on the needle, and what we're going to do is knit 2 together the whole way round. So it gets a bit tight here, just bear with it. Slide the stitches round so it's easier for you. And then the last 2 of the round, we are going to knit these 2 together. There we go. Now if we have a look, we can see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stitches left on the circular needles. So hopefully you've got your scissors handy. Cut that yarn, leaving a nice long tail. There we go. Then we're going to get our darning needle. This one's got a really big eye because I'm using super chunky yarn, so it just makes it super easy to thread it through, she says. There we go. Okay, now we're going to do the scary bit, which is keep that darning needle in there. We're going to slide all the stitches to one end of the needles. There we go. And we are going to thread them off. So slide them off. Very scary moment. Da da da. There we go. Put your circular needle to the side. And then with our darning needle, we are going to thread through these stitches. Now we're going to count each one as we do it to make sure we don't drop one. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just going to pull that through a little bit. 5, 6, and then the last one, 7. And we are going to pull that nice and tight. And what we're going to do is find the center, keeping it pulled tight, And find the center of the 7 stitches, there it's there, and push the needle through, all the way through. We're then going to turn the hat the other way around, so we are now looking at the inside, and we've pulled the tail end all the way through, and here's the center again, and we're just going to thread it through a couple of these stitches and make a little knot to secure, because we do not want our hat unraveling. And I'm just going to be on the extra safe side, put another knot in there. Okay, and then we can leave that tail attached. So it's now on the inside, hat's inside out, turn it the right way around again. Now there's our stitch marker, which we no longer need, so adios stitch marker. And we can see our decrease. If I hold this like this, you can see our decrease has created like a cool star shape all the way around the hat, which looks wicked. So we've got our nice brim, then we've got the body, and then we've got our nice crown, which is from our decrease. So we've still got the tail end here, and we've still got this tail inside, but we don't really need this tail end here anymore. So all I'm going to do is get my darning needle again and thread that through, and I'm just going to discreetly hide the tail. So I'm going to pick up some of these loops under here, weave in this end, now because this hat has got quite a big brim to it, it's quite handy to thread the tail end or weave the tail end in quite high up, so we're actually now at the body, in case whoever's wearing it wants to turn the brim up. So there we go, we're into the body now, so I think that's high enough up. You can see how high up I went there. And I'm just going to do a little knot, just to secure it, and then cut that off. Now that's your hat. If you want, you can cut off that bit tail end from the top and your hat's ready to wear. Or you can attach a super chunky pom-pom to the top and wear it as a bobble hat. So you either snip off that tail and you're ready to go, or we create a pom-pom. So I'm going to show you how to create a pom-pom. Okay, so to make the pom-pom, I'm going to get some contrasting coloured yarn. Now of course you could use the same coloured yarn if you want, but I think the contrast of these two looks really smart, so I'm going to make it with the contrasting colour. To make the pom-pom, I'm using the pom-pom maker. This one is quite a big one. This is 85mm pom-pom maker. And I'm just going to open the pom-pom maker up. So we've got one arch here. We line these two bits up. And then we get the tail end of our contrasting coloured yarn and just hold it in place at the far edge of this arch. And we then start to wrap it round. Now wrap it around a couple of times just to get it tight and secure on there. There we go. And then we are just going to continue wrapping the yarn round. Try and keep it nice and even and keep the yarn pulled pretty tight the whole time. Make sure you get right in the corner there. There we go. And we're going back again. So it depends how thick you want your pom-pom as to how many times you go back and forth. I do love a really thick and chunky pom-pom, so I am going to go back again. This time I'm not being as strict on keeping one strand right next to the other. It's okay if we have a bit of gaps this time, but I'm still holding the yarn pretty tight. And then we're going back again. So we're going to end closest to this part of the pom-pom maker. The reason for that is now that we've finished this half, I'm going to push this bit into the middle, and now we've got the working yarn closest to the next arch that we're going to start wrapping round. So just keep the yarn attached and then just go straight into wrapping it nice and tight around the second arch. And we're going back on ourselves. And oops. And then to finish off, we're just going back towards the outer bit of the arch, just so both sides are even. And there we go. And now I'm going to close that second arch up so we have it all joined up together. And holding it towards the end, I'm going to snip here because we don't need the rest of the yarn. There we go. And what I'm going to do now, so you see here, there is a gap. I'm going to cut a lot right the way along here to this end. So you do need pretty sharp scissors to do this, else it feels like you're hacking at it quite a bit. Especially because we went over it so many times, so it's pretty thick. And then we get to the end of that arch and we can see where we brought the yarn round from finishing the first one. We're just going to snip that bit. And then again, we're going to snip the second arch all the way around. There we go. Oh, missed a bit. So now we have cut all the way around and we have all these nice edges here. We're then going to cut a really big tail from the ball end of the yarn in the contrasting colour still. And what we're going to do is, with this length of yarn, put it in this weird gap that's all the way around that we just cut. There is a gap that goes all the way around and we are going to put it in there and pull it tight. And we're then going to do a couple of little knots just to secure that. One, pull tight, and then another one, pull tight again, so nice and secure. And then what we do with the pom-pom maker is we flick back these curves. So there's one of the arches, another, flip it this way around, 1, 2, so all 4 are out. Then we've got this white bit in the middle, it's held together by a pin, and all we've got to do is pull these 2 bits apart. There we go. And then we have our lovely, super chunky and nice and thick pom-pom. If there's any wee straggly bits, you can just trim them off so that it's nice and spherical or however you want it. When you're doing this, hold it away from you so you can actually see which bits are like the flyaways. And just trim round until you are happy with the shape. So now what we're going to do is attach it to our hat. So we need to bring back our trusty darning needle and bring back the hat. Here it is. And we are going to, first of all, we've got these 2 tails onto our pom-pom. That's from when we secured it all together. And we are going to thread both tails into the darning needle. So the pom-pom's now on the needle. Pick up our hat. I've got the left hand's inside, my right hand's got the darning needle. And then I'm going to go into the centre where our 7 stitches were that we thread through and push that through. I'll turn it inside out. And I'm going to pull the pom-pom, or the strings, up until I can feel the pom-pom is right up against the top of the hat. Now do you remember this tail bit that we left attached? We're then going to take both tails of our pom-pom and tie it in a knot around that tail end of yarn inside the hat, and we're going to do that twice. Now we've got these 2 tails, pull out the one that's the shortest, there we go, and then we'll take the one with the longest, still on the darning needle, we're going to push the needle through the top of the hat and until it reaches the top of the pom-pom. There, it's there. Be careful here not to stab yourself. So pull that tail in through, and then we're going to push the darning needle back through the pom-pom, catch in the middle of it so it's nice and secure, and then push it through to the inside of the hat. Again, be careful not to stab yourself. So we will pull that through, and there's our tail ends again. So now I'm just going to knot that in place. We'll do 2 knots, You can tell that I like to be on the safe side with my knots. And then we've got our 3 strands here. We are just going to snip them all off about the same length, a couple of millimeters, and they can be discarded. Turn it the right way around, and there we have it. Our super chunky rib brimmed hat with contrasting pom-pom. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope you found it really helpful. Give us a thumbs up and don't forget to hit subscribe so you can be alerted to when I next post an awesome video tutorial. Thank you.